In the study of Uchiha biology, we are taught that the Mangekyō is a mirror of the soul, a unique aesthetic reflection of individual trauma. But when we subject these patterns to a forensic waveform analysis, the artistic choice theory collapses. Most researchers overlook a critical anomaly in the eternal Mangekyō process. When Madara took Izuna's eyes, the result was a hybrid, a merged interface. But when Sasuke took Itachi's eyes, the spiral was deleted. It wasn't a merger, it was a total system overwrite. This brings us to today's forensic question. Why does one pattern merge while the other erases? To find the answer, we have to look past the iris and into the underlying data. Our thesis for this dossier is simple. The Choku pattern isn't a cosmetic variant. It is a dominant, high bandwidth, physical band frequency. It is a specialized hardware interface designed for extreme kinetic tracking, a trait so genetically aggressive that it doesn't just join the network, it re-indexes the entire system. Today, we decode the hardware of the Uchiha elite. To understand why the pattern matters, we have to look at how these eyes process data. In the Uchiha knowledge graph, we can categorize the Mangekyō into two primary operating systems, the spiral band and the Choku band. First, the spiral band. This is the standard output for the majority of the clan. Its waveform consists of rhythmic, looping frequencies ideal for spiritual and mind-based energy. This looping hardware is optimized for recursive data cycles, like Genjutsu, or the complex structural integrity required for Susanoo. It's a software-heavy interface. Itachi and Shisui didn't need high-speed kinetic tracking. They needed the bandwidth to rewrite a target's reality. But then, we have the Choku band. This is the physical kinetic anomaly. The waveform here isn't a loop. It's a series of sharp, high-frequency linear pulses. This is thin client processing built for raw speed. This isn't just theory. Madara Uchiha himself provided the forensic confirmation when he analyzed Sasuke's movements. He explicitly identified the straight Tomoe as the hardware responsible for fluid motion and extreme tracking. While the spiral band calculates what the target sees, the Choku band calculates where the target is with millisecond precision. As we're about to see in our genetic model, these two bands aren't equal. When they collide in a single optic nerve, the Choku frequency doesn't just cooperate, it dominates the signal. In genetics, dominance is determined by which trait expresses itself when two different alleles meet. If we apply this Mendelian logic to the Uchiha knowledge graph, a clear hierarchy emerges. The Choku trait isn't just a variant, it is a dominant genetic frequency. Consider the Sasuke case. Sasuke is a natural Choku pattern. When he integrated Itachi's spiral band eyes to achieve the eternal Mangekyō, there was no compromise. The Choku frequency is so aggressive, so high in bandwidth, that it performed a total recursive overwrite. Itachi's software was effectively re-indexed. The result was a pattern that remained 100% straight. In this genetic crossmatch, the physical frequency completely silenced the spiritual loop. Now, contrast this with the Madara case. Madara's original baseline was a spiral band, a specialist in the spiritual and spiritual physical arts of ninjutsu. When he integrated Izuna's Choku pattern eyes, his internal system encountered a massive hardware mismatch. Because Madara's primary biolink was tuned to a slower, spiritual frequency, his neural signal couldn't fully overwrite Izuna's dominant physical hardware. Instead of a total conversion, the two signals were forced to coexist. To utilize that high-speed kinetic tracking, Madara's system had to develop a compatibility patch. This resulted in a merged interface, the hybrid EMS. He didn't delete the Choku, he bridged into it. This forensic distinction proves that the Choku pattern is the alpha signal of the Uchiha lineage, a trait that either consumes the spiral or forces it to adapt. In the forensic study of dojutsu, there is a common misconception that the Mangekyō grants the user a new combat style. Our data suggests the opposite. The Mangekyō is a mirror. It reflects the user's existing neural frequency. It doesn't dictate it. Consider the combat specialists, Sasuke and Izuna. Long before their eyes bled, they were natural physical prodigies, excelling in high-speed hand-to-hand combat and kinetic precision. In forensic terms, their baseline neural signal was already vibrating on the Choku band. When the Mangekyō awakened, it simply provided the hardware interface necessary to maximize that existing signal. The Choku pattern is the result of their natural kinetic frequency, not the cause of it. They didn't become fast because they had straight Tomoe. They had straight Tomoe because their brains were already wired for speed. This brings us to the transplant buff. Madara Uchiha is a legendary powerhouse, but his early records show a heavy reliance on ninjutsu and massive constructs. It wasn't until he integrated Izuna's Choku hardware into his own spiral system that we see him evolve into a high-tier, close-quarters combat specialist. By taking Izuna's eyes, Madara essentially hacked his way into the physical band. He gained a hardware interface he wasn't born with, allowing his spiritual mind to finally process the high bandwidth tracking needed for elite close-quarters combat. He didn't just take his brother's sight, he upgraded his operating system to include a frequency he could never have reached on his own. Up to this point, our data suggests that the Choku and spiral bands are mutually exclusive. One typically overwrites or bridges into the other through a transplant. But there is one glaring anomaly in the Uchiha knowledge graph. Obito Uchiha's Mangekyō is the only natural hybrid in the series. It possesses both the straight bars of a kinetic specialist and the geometric spiral of a spiritual master. To solve this, we must look at the unique circumstances of its initialization. Usually, an eye is awakened by a single processor. But on the night of the Rin tragedy, this specific dojutsu was awakened via a synchronized awakening across two different users. One eye was being processed by Kakashi, a natural physical prodigy who was a Jonin before he even held a Sharingan. His neural output was vibrating on a pure Choku frequency. The other was being processed by Obito, a classic late bloomer whose baseline was a standard spiral frequency. Because these eyes were linked across dimensions, the initialization signal wasn't sent from a single source, it was a dual-stream upload. Kakashi's high-bandwidth kinetic data met Obito's spiritual data in the middle. The result was a midpoint compromise, a natural hybrid. Because the eye was being shared across a dimensional link at the exact moment of awakening, the hardware was forced to process two conflicting biosignatures at once. This is why Kakashi, a non-Uchiha, could handle the extreme kinetic tracking of a Mangekyō without the typical system lag found in other transplants. He wasn't just a recipient using borrowed hardware. Because he was there at the moment of activation, he helped initialize the very frequency that built the eye. He didn't just inherit the power, he was a co-author of its unique DNA. No forensic investigation is complete without addressing the error log, the common misconceptions that cloud our understanding of dojutsu hardware. The most frequent rebuttal is that these patterns are just art style, visual flair with no mechanical meaning. But the data says otherwise. In the Fourth Shinobi War, Madara provided a clinical classification of Sasuke's eyes that changes everything. By explicitly using the term Choku-Tomoe, or straight Tomoe, to explain Sasuke's kinetic advantage, the series confirms that the pattern is a functional plot point. In our research dossier, art style is an irrelevant variable. Choku-Tomoe is a specialized hardware specification. It is a deliberate biological upgrade designed for a specific purpose, reducing the delay between perception and movement. It's not just about how the eye looks, it's about how the eye performs. This brings us to the Itachi EMS theory. Many fans believe that if Itachi had taken Sasuke's eyes, he would have gained a duplicate of Sasuke's pattern. Our forensic model suggests a different outcome. Because Itachi had a spiral-based pattern, his neural frequency was too slow to perform a recursive overwrite of a dominant Choku signal. Had he survived to take Sasuke's eyes, he wouldn't have deleted the straight bars. He would have been forced into a hybrid EMS similar to Madara's. Itachi's spiritual software would have required a bridge to access Sasuke's physical hardware. In the Uchiha arms race, You cannot erase a higher bandwidth signal with a lower tier processor. Dominance is a one-way street. When we look at the history of the Uchiha, we often frame their evolution as a pursuit of raw power, a quest for more chakra. But the forensic evidence suggests a much more sophisticated struggle. This isn't just a power grab, it's an evolutionary arms race centered on hardware bandwidth. In an era dominated by ninjutsu and massive spiritual constructs, the spiral pattern was the standard software patch, optimized for the mind games and reality warping that defined the clan's legend. But as combat speeds reached the limits of human reaction, the gene pool produced a superior hardware upgrade. The Choku pattern is the ultimate physical patch. It represents a transition from spiritual manipulation to absolute kinetic supremacy. By retuning the eye's biological signature to favor high-frequency tracking, the Choku user moves past the hardware lag of standard Shinobi combat. It isn't just a different look. It is an optimized neural interface that processes the battlefield at a speed the standard Uchiha anatomy simply cannot reach. Whether it was born naturally in a prodigy like Sasuke or hacked through transplant by a master like Madara, the conclusion is the same. In a world of magic, the one who can process reality at the highest frequency wins. This concludes our dossier on the Choku-Dominance. The lab is now open for your theories. Which frequency will we decode next? The evidence is clear. The Uchiha lineage isn't just a story of eyes and hatred. It's a multi-generational data war. Whether you're running a standard spiral band interface or a high-frequency Choku Tomoe, your hardware defines your limits. If you want to stay connected to the Shinobi Anatomy Network, subscribe to the channel. This ensures you're the first to receive our next forensic broadcast. If this deep dive helped you re-index your understanding of the Mangekyō, give the video a sync. It helps the algorithm prioritize our data streams. The lab is now open for peer review. Do you believe the Choku pattern is a purely genetic dominant trait, or is it a software overwrite triggered by high-speed neural activity? Drop your forensic theories in the comments below. I'll be hearting the most logical breakdowns that survive our error log scrutiny. Until the next investigation, dossier closed.